Welcome back everyone to Game of the Week, a series where each week I'll be taking a niche and unpopular Roblox game and reviewing it. And if I miss a single day of uploading, this series will end. As always, the link for every game I play will be down in the description below, so if you want to go check the games out, all you gotta do is scroll down and click the first link you see in the description. But without any further dilly-dallying, this game's Game of the Week is... Monster Employer. Now, Monster Employer is basically like the FNAF 6 salvage minigame section of the game if it was actually made into a whole ass game. And also if the monsters weren't evil and trying to kill you and fucking bite your head off and whatever. At least for the most part, you know. In Monster Employer, some of the monsters still do try to kill you, but, you know, for the most part, they are chill, unlike in that aforementioned FNAF 6 salvage section. The basic loop of Monster Employer is that you're in your little dark, dingy office that's like a fucking void in the middle of nowhere for some reason, and a bunch of monsters will come up to your dark, dingy office, and you will have to decide whether or not you want to hire them by having a little conversation, I guess, to the best of your ability with them, and attempting to interview them. And the reason I say attempting to interview them is because some of these monsters are pretty cooperative, you know? They speak with you, they answer your questions, you're able to, like, you know, figure out their positive and negative qualities pretty easily. But then there are other monsters that either speak a little bit, and then there are even more monsters that just don't speak at all, unless you do some weird magic trick in order to get them to, like, answer your question in some way at least. I think my favorite thing about this whole interview part of the game is how subjective some of the answers are. Because whenever you interview a new monster, you will get this, like, big sheets of qualities that you will, like, need to check if the monster either fulfills or doesn't fulfill. Like, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they scary? Are they masked? Are they gross? Are they deceitful? And so on and so on. Now, some of these features are pretty easy to sniff out. You can pretty obviously tell if a monster is masked or not masked, if they're deceitful or not deceitful, if they're sad or not sad. But sometimes answers are a little bit more ambiguous, like, what constitutes as scary in this game, you know? Like, I mean, some of the monsters are pretty scary, and some of them I think are scary, but they don't really scare me specifically. And then, like, what does gross mean, for example? How do you 100% know what gross is? And then there are other things on your checklist that can be a little bit ambiguous, because as I mentioned before, all of these monsters speak in a different way, you know? Some of them speak clearly, like a relatively normal person would, right? But some of them speak in, like, weird fucking tongues, and some of them speak really cryptically, and some of them speak in, like, mysterious-ass ways, and they don't really give you a clear answer, and are a bit ambiguous in what they are, and who they are, and whatever else. So there are some questions on the checklist where honestly you will just need to use your best judgment to figure out whether or not a monster has a certain quality or doesn't have a certain quality, or is deceitful or isn't deceitful, and so on and so on. This ambiguity really adds quite a bit of replayability to the game, because without replaying the game at least a few times and encountering monsters at least a couple different times in a couple different playthroughs, you won't really be able to, like, guess first try on some of them, you know, whether or not they're a good fit for a job. But anyways, after you reach the end of the week and have your performance review and make your $67 like I did, you make it back to your apartment, which honestly, this is a bit off topic, but it really reminds me of this horror game that I used to play on Roblox called A Distant Memory, which was really, really fucking disturbing and gave me some fucking nightmares as a kid, I'm not gonna lie. But that's what this apartment that you live in this game reminds me of. But anyways, as I mentioned, as I said before, when you make your money at the end of the week, you will go back to your apartment, and with your money, you can buy like a bunch of different upgrades for your empty apartment and spruce it up and decorate it and all that. And I think this feature is pretty cool. It offers you a feeling of having like a little checkpoint, a little place of respite after like every week that you work at this job, and I think it's pretty cool. Now, even though this isn't the craziest, the most fleshed out, most insane game that I've ever seen in my entire life on Roblox, I still think it's a nice little tech demo, and you know what? For what it's worth, I really enjoyed playing this game over the span of a few hours. My favorite part about it was definitely the art style. I think it was really pretty to look at. Every single monster was just phenomenally designed. I haven't truly encountered a single one that looked boring or was just like kinda or just had nothing special about it. They were all pretty good in my opinion. And every time I send a monster on their way, I was really excited to see what the game would throw at me next, because the monsters in this game could be literally fucking anything. They could range from being like the cutest thing ever, or just like a small plant or something, to being like fucking horrors beyond human comprehension. Like it was always really fun to see what the game would throw at me next. And honestly, this is a bit of a side tangent, but the critters and creatures in this game kind of reminded me of Hollow Knight for some reason. Like Hollow Knight and Silk Song also have like a huge variety of like different creatures and monsters and living things in general throughout the games. And they're all uniquely weird in their own way, both in terms of how they speak and how they act, but also in terms of how they look and how they're drawn and how they're put into the game. And that's kind of what this game reminded me of, and I really like that. But yeah, overall, this game, even though it might not be the craziest thing you ever played, I highly suggest checking it out, because it's one of the most creative and interesting and best looking and honestly original and unique experiences that I've ever played on the entirety of Roblox. So I definitely suggest that you guys at least give it a try and, you know, play it for at least an hour or so. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the game. I really liked it overall. Shout out to the devs. But yeah, that's all I have to say for this video, fellas. I hope you go play the game and have some fun, and I hope to see you next week. Goodbye.